Hey world, what up? We're covering here the Phoenix Suns, who are 5-2 in the NBA within the league for 2021. One of the top three teams in the Western Conference as of right now. And hey, I get it. It's only been 7 games. I'm not gonna jump the gun, not gonna give hot takes. Just gonna evaluate and do my thing. I've always stated I expected the Phoenix Suns, whenever they acquired Chris Paul from that quote unquote blockbuster trade, I expected them to finish around the 6th through the 8th seed in the Western Conference. Now, there are a lot of Suns fans and somewhat NBA fans that kind of expressed themselves. They expect the Phoenix Suns to actually be around a 4th seed through a 6th seed, somewhere in that range. With me, when I put the 6th through 8th seed, that's more on the safe bet. We've seen more implosions of the Denver Nuggets early as of right now, as they are 2-4. I expected the Utah Jazz to be lower in the rankings, but they're 4-2 right now, and it's still early. It's only been around 6 or 7 games, so I'm not going to take too much upon the standings. Who else? You do have the Golden State Warriors that are 4-3 as of right now. Steph Curry heard all the slander, and he came back with 62 points in the victory over the Portland Trailblazers. So right now, the rankings in the NBA in the Western Conference are somewhat expected when it comes down to it. The LA Clippers and the LA Lakers are on top of the Western Conference. You do have the Phoenix Suns, and then kind of rattling down within the West. Within the Phoenix Suns, looking more into the acquisitions of Jay Crowder, Etuan Moore. You still have Monty Williams in the crew in their foundation. They're around nice 8 to 9, quote unquote, deep within their team. You could go a little forward within 10. But the Phoenix Suns within Chris Paul and the new look, they resemble a lot to me like a young Chris Paul's Los Angeles Clippers. And those Clippers teams, they would always finish around a 3rd seed or a 4th seed. At worst case scenario, a 5th seed in the Western Conference, even in the early days and even within their peak. And within Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton leading the way, it's looking like I may have to, I'm not going to jump the gun, but I really kind of expect them right now to finish around a 3rd or 4th seed in the Western Conference. But during the preseason, I had them stuck as a 6th seed. I'm going to leave them where they're at because you do have veteran contending teams like the Denver Nuggets, the Houston Rockets, that they can get up and within those spots. So I'm still going to keep them at number 6, but if I were to put my money, if I had to really put an evaluation what they're trending, they are a formidable team. Their chemistry is around an A minus as of right now, and they're playing as a unit. So I can really expect them to be a 3rd or 4th seed in the Western Conference. I'm going to keep it where I'm at. Let's jump here on ESPN's The Jump and give a little take more about the Phoenix Suns, of how they've been contending within the beginning of 2021.
Tied for the second best record, not in the West, guys, in the league at 5-2. Our researcher, Michael Schwartz, could barely come to work today because of all the dancing he's been doing for the past week. They are 3rd in defensive efficiency, 4th in net efficiency, and 1st in limiting opponents' made 3-point field goals per game. I told you our researcher is a big fan of this team. We get all the stats for the Phoenix Suns. Fizz, are you buying the Suns' hot start to continue deep into the season?
I do. I expected the Phoenix Suns to be in that 6th seed, and that's not a bad thing within the Western Conference. I mean, you got the Clippers, you got the Lakers, you got the Nuggets, you got the Mavericks, you got the Rockets. Even though they have the James Harden quote unquote implosion and all that, they're still a contending team. Who else? You got the Warriors back in the mix, even though Clay's out. Still got to respect them. You got the Pelicans, you got the Trailblazers. There's many other teams I'm not even mentioning as of right now. But the Phoenix Suns being within that 3rd and 4th range, I see that to continue to trend, of course, because they have Chris Paul. And again, like I said before, they resemble like a young Los Angeles Clippers team. But instead of having Blake Griffin, you have Devin Booker, who is a shooting guard. He's an all-star, and he can give you around 25 a season. Easy to average. Right now, Devin Booker is averaging around 21 points a game for the first 7 games, but he's adjusting to Chris Paul and the crew. He'll be able to rank it up. Instead of Chris Paul playing with DeAndre Jordan, who is just a defender, a blocker, and who can catch a lob on the fast break or a pick and roll, you do have DeAndre Ayton, who's in his third season, who can post up, get his own buckets, and can dominate down low, and who's going to be a future all-star in this league. So Chris Paul is in a very great situation within Phoenix with a bunch of young cats with potential. So Phoenix, as of right now, they're buying into Chris Paul. They're buying into this playoff mode. They're buying in as a unit. I really like the acquisition of Jay Crowder, who just came from playing in the NBA Finals with the Miami Heat. That was a huge addition for a stretch four on their team. A huge one.
Absolutely am buying it. First off, let's credit James Jones with putting an awesome team together. Monty Williams should have never been an assistant coach. This guy is a big-time head coach in the NBA. He's a tactician. He gets the most out of his guys. And you're talking about Chris Paul, the great competitor. You're talking about a Devin Booker who's breaking through to getting into conversations like MVP. And you got a big-time 7.
Hey, man, no. Devin Booker, not MVP. He's not going to be in that conversation. Not until another 4 or 5 seasons, if so.
Footer who's back there learning how to defend on a nightly basis and bring energy and effort to the game. I like them. I don't know if they can hold.
And after the bubble, back in the summer, when they had an 8-0 perfect record in the bubble, and they just barely missed the playoffs, the Phoenix Suns were in a particular situation. Management was on their heels. They were on their toes because Devin Booker was pretty much allegedly, and he was entertaining the idea of having rumors of trade proposals of him going to team up with D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns in Minnesota, or to request a trade somewhere else. So I was right there. Phoenix was in that situation. They had to make a move for Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Now, I was expecting them to go to a younger direction of trying to pick up like an Aaron Gordon, not a Buddy Hield, but some of those young cats, maybe a Michael Porter Jr., trying to find someone in that mix that could really fit alongside with Devin Booker. But looking in the NBA landscape out there, that wasn't the case. Michael Porter Jr. had an excellent NBA playoffs, and he was pretty much off any trade market, and the Denver Nuggets wanted to keep him. Aaron Gordon, he didn't show up in the playoffs. He didn't show up in the bubble as much. So the Orlando Magic pretty much had a tough time putting him in the trade market. And you're Phoenix. Again, you're in desperation mode. So they went a certain direction, a certain angle most NBA fans didn't really expect. They pulled in Chris Paul. And when I first heard the news of Chris Paul on the team, I knew it was, and hear me out, it was a desperate move, but it's not a bad move. Even though you're young within Devin Booker, who's around 24, 25, and DeAndre Ayton, who's around 22, 23, you couldn't find any other young stars with potential, and you're not going to waste a couple more years building in the draft. And the Phoenix Suns, Devin Booker's been on the franchise for 5 seasons. This is going to be his 6th one, so they had to make a quick move. Chris Paul was there. So I don't blame them for that. That actually, right now, is going to be a 2-year experiment with Chris Paul. I believe Chris Paul, after this season, they'll probably lose in the first or second round, and he'll stay with the Phoenix Suns by opting in for one last year within his contract. I think after that season, Chris Paul will go elsewhere, and Devin Booker and the crew, they can build off their team by having playoff experience, and they're back in their peak.
This spot.
Right.
But I think that we are looking at a playoff team, and we're looking at a dangerous team when it comes to those playoffs.
Well, look, they were a team that was a revelation in the bubble, right? Like Devin Booker was the star of the bubble. They were great. But when you add a guy like Chris Paul, the question is it going to be a seamless transition? So far, it has been. And I think the big stat that you put up there that is most telling to me is they're doing it with defense. It's not just about the way Chris Paul's organizing the offense, the way Devin Booker can score, the way Bridges is hitting 3-pointers right now. Devin Booker hasn't actually been as good as he was in the bubble. He's 5.5 turnovers a game. He's got to clean that up a little bit. But when you have that defense, when you're organized on that end of the floor, you're going to be in a lot of games. And I think that's where you give credit to Monty Williams and his staff for bringing this team together on that end of the floor.
Absolutely. And I think Chris Paul and Monty Williams already had that connection.
For sure.
So talking about seamless, I mean, you already played for a guy. You've already been in the trench with him. You know what to expect from him. Monty handed that thing over to Chris, and now he's got a coach on the floor. I expect this team to be really good this year.
All I know is
And again, I expect them to finish around. My prediction was a 6 seed. I would not be shocked or surprised if they finish a third or fourth. And again, to resemble a young Los Angeles Clippers team, but with a better and higher IQ. Those Clippers teams did not have a good IQ whatsoever. They did not. And they didn't have depth. These Phoenix Suns, with their coaching and within the veterans who have playoff contending championship status, like Jay Crowder, that really helps out the team. And Chris Paul, even though he hasn't been to a finals or won a championship, he still brings that same presence and the demand within the team. That's what Devin Booker could really latch onto, and that's what he's been wanting. Devin Booker's been playing as a number one guy with a bunch of role players and young cats who have no idea what they're doing, and he couldn't be able to handle the load for the first 4 or 5 seasons. Now you bring in Chris Paul, that brings a huge reassurance to Devin Booker, especially DeAndre Ayton as well. Because again, Chris Paul made Tyson Chandler and DeAndre Jordan flourish as all-stars in their career. He will do the same thing to DeAndre Ayton. I don't expect DeAndre Ayton this season to be an all-star, but I expect next season he will be an all-star. And Devin Booker will continue to be one as well. And Chris Paul, he's a traditional point guard. He can play until he's like 41, 42. And even though Chris Paul this season is probably going to average around 11 to 13 points a game, and then he'll probably have around 10, 11 assists. So he's good where he's at. Devin Booker is averaging 22. I expect that number to bump up to around 25 and 26. And then DeAndre Ayton right now, he's only averaging, I believe, around 11 points and 13 rebounds. So they'll start to catch a groove as they've been doing to do so. A great hot start if you're Phoenix. And I can see they'll continue to make this trend to where they'll be kind of steady within the top echelon of the West.
The karma fairy is walking around handing out good things. Monty Williams deserves all of them. All the good karma
awesome
for him. And I would also say, look, 5-2, it's a start, right? It's not going to guarantee a playoff spot. It's not going to do any of that stuff. But I will say it's a shorter season. I just have to keep saying it. Each game is not one of 82. It's one of 72. That makes a difference. And so these starts are something we got to pay a little bit more attention to.
I agree.
I do want to take some time to pay our respects also to Paul Westphal.
All right, we're going to end it on there. The hot, rolling, young Phoenix Suns with Chris Paul are taking the league by storm as a 5-2 record. Top 3 in the Western Conference as of right now. Of course, I'm going to be covering. I got my eye on them a little more. They are one of those top teams that I love to watch in the NBA this season. They're up and running. They got a good flow together. I really like the flow and the vibe of their units, especially with Chris Paul. Chris Paul is electric with the OKC Thunder. Same thing with the Phoenix Suns, but now he has a star player within Devin Booker and then a future all-star in DeAndre Ayton. They got a good makeup. I really like the flow and vibe with Monty Williams as the coach. Keep them where they're at. And I think the Phoenix Suns are in the right direction. I think their peak is probably a first or second round exit. If the Clippers and the Phoenix Suns are second and third seed and the Lakers are first, who knows? Maybe the Phoenix Suns could go for that conference final spot, but I'm not going to jump the gun as of right now. But you got to keep an eye on them. Kudos to them, and we'll cover more.